Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we are discussing when the Lord of Iron Perturabo faced the Praetorian Rogal Dorn upon the walls of the Imperial Palace. A spoiler warning to begin here, as the events we're discussing today are from the Horus Heresy Siege of Terra novel, The First Wall, by author Gav Thorpe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, when it comes to the rivalries amongst the Primarchs, you're going to struggle to find one more intense, more bitter, more acrimonious, long word I know, than that of Rogal Dorn and Perturabo. These two Primarchs, so similar in nature, were so completely opposed in spirit. And honestly, it's not really an animosity that spawned from one particular side. They both have always just seemed to grate against each other, no matter what, burned with a desire to prove the other wrong, themselves superior. And it's perhaps out of all the Primarchs the best example that we have of how the Emperor wanted them to push each other on to greater achievements. How he intentionally made all the Primarchs to be rivals with each other, to clash, an element that perhaps made the divide between them too vast, becoming hatred instead of kinship. It's a development that Malcador would later come to regret, the more the Great Crusade continued on. And it's easy to see why, when the rivals became as bitter as some did, personified by the Emperor's Praetorian and his Lord of Iron. A factor that perhaps in hindsight, the Emperor himself would change if he could. And so of course, it seemed inevitable that Rogal and Perturabo would be opposed when the civil war of the heresy ripped the Primarchs in two. Rogal the chosen Praetorian, and Perturabo the neglected son, at least in his own mind. And with the arrival of the Siege of Terra, of course Perturabo was more than invigorated by the prospect of tearing Rogal's defences apart, proving his superiority over his brother, to his father, and for all the galaxy to see. The Siege of Terra wasn't about the War Master and the Emperor, it was about who was superior between Perturabo and Rogal. Their battle was personal, as Perturabo summed up perfectly to his sons within the heresy novel The First Wall by author Gav Thorpe. The Emperor's Praetorian has laid his plans with guile and patience, doubtless trying to anticipate my every move, countering in advance every stratagem, ploy and tactic he has gleaned from my previous work. Be sure, Forex, that every stone laid in this palace was done so in consideration of my arrival. As certain as our foes have been that Horus would one day reach Terra, my brother has been equally sure that it is my wit, my siegecraft, that would be the test of his defences. So as much as it seemed destined to happen, Perturabo, and in truth Rogal too, equally knew it was their personal conflict that would decide this battle, that would decide the fate of the galaxy. And so commenced their battle of minds, predicting and second-guessing every possible move and counter the other would make, analysing and scouring over every action of the enemy, until Perturabo, knowing the battle he faced, knowing that Rogal knew his own mind as well as his own, decided to try something totally out of the box, letting his son Kroger command an attack against the seeming stronghold of the Lion Gate spaceport. It was a move Perturabo would have never made himself, and even if he did, he wouldn't perform it as Kroger intended, which was exactly what Perturabo wanted. An action made that had no trace of his own genius in for Rogal to see. An attempt by Perturabo to completely confuse Rogal for the first time in the Praetorian's life upon the battlefield. And so the attack commenced, with indeed Rogal being at a loss as to what Perturabo was up to, however refusing to counter the move until he could figure out what his brother was doing, leaving the defence down instead to his son Fafnir Ran. And though the battle is long and complex, with the traitors making use of the Primarchs Angron and Fulgrim, essentially it worked. The Iron Warriors infiltrated the spaceport, and after 21 days of fighting, despite Rogal dispatching Sigismund with 3,000 reinforcements, communication with the Lion Gate spaceport finally went down, with Rogal knowing exactly what that meant. "This is it," said the Primarch. "He will be coming now." "It is what, my lord? Who is coming?" "Perturabo, the Lord of Iron. This is his masterstroke. He thinks, blinded, cut off, our forces are ripe to be swept away by his arrival, a self-indulgent finale to his victory. Why now? Sigismund has been too focused on the bridges. He has forgotten he needed to defend the Star Spear as well. Dorn let his pent-up anger free, slamming a fist into the palm of his other hand. Vorst withdrew a step, aghast at this unusual display from his lord. This has always been a battle for the docks, not the bridges. With the upper guns overrun or blinded, my traitor brother can bring in as many ships as he wants. He can bring in whatever strength he needs to overrun the spaceport terminals. Titan transports, said Vorst, hushed by the notion. Or a battle barge, snarled Dorn. He turned his gaze upwards, as though looking into orbit, imagining his brother on the bridge of the Iron Blood. Would he be brooding or exultant? His first victory on Terra was close at hand. How did it feel, taking that step closer to the inner palace? "Orders, Lord Dorn." The Primarch realised it was the second time of asking. "Alert all forces at the Lion's Gate. Prepare supporting fire and sally attacks to cover the withdrawal at the spaceport. Keep trying to signal Sigismund. He is to order full, strategic retreat to the bridges, and then to the Lion's Gate. The spaceport has fallen, Vorst. It is just a matter of time, and how many of our warriors we can extricate from under the enemy guns. Every soldier saved today will stand to fight tomorrow." He strode towards the steps, reaching for a helmet that hung on a stand at the back of the platform. "You are leaving, Lord Dorn." Vorst hurried after him. "Yes, prepare my gunship and my Huskarls." He had matched wit and will with Perturabo across star systems, siege lines and palace walls. Now it was time to face his brother in person. You can just feel the personal aspect of it here in Rogal's words. The way he looks up to orbit, imagining Perturabo upon his bridge. The cut of not just the traitors getting a victory, but of Perturabo beating him. It's tough for Rogal, because he has to swallow a great deal of pride in this siege. Try and place his ego aside, which is not an easy thing for a Primarch. because he knows he has to just bide time, that every second he delays the enemy is a second more for Guilliman to arrive. So he knows this is but a single battlefield in the wider war. But still, you can just feel it's not. It's a victory for Perturabo. The thought of him boasting, believing it proves himself superior. That anger that Rogal lets out isn't just aimed at Sigismund's error. It's equally aimed at himself for allowing Perturabo to gain this victory. And so of course the opportunity to meet Perturabo face to face, in combat, is an opportunity that Rogal cannot turn down. Because again, he knows him too well. He knows Perturabo will have to be there, in person, to bask in the glory. And so Rogal would arrive at the spaceport, hacking his way through the traitors, and it would be then that Perturabo's gunship arrived. 100 meters of blooded ferrocretes separated two demigods, created as brothers by the same bioalchemy, yet raised so disparate in temperament. One lauded as the builder, the other as a destroyer, but in skill and aptitude identical. Dorn, the Praetorian of the Emperor, the bastion upon which the Imperium had been built, the hammer of Olympia, Perturabo, doom of 1,000 fortresses. The Lord of Iron stood Forgebreaker's pommel on the broken stone of the ground, leaning forwards to rest his arms on its wide head. Brother. All of Perturabo's scorn poured into that one word. His external address carried his voice easily across the distance, while Vox Transmit broadcast it across an open channel for all to hear. Dorn did not reply. Do you wish to discuss terms? At this, the Praetorian stiffened, hands moving on the grip of the two-handed chainsword. You think me beaten? The reply drifted back, derision in the tone. Perturabo cast his gaze about the terminal. His forces were on the advance everywhere he looked. A small cluster of the Blood Gods Neverborn had emerged from Lyak's remains, ashen swords flashing as they fought with a ring of Imperial Fists Terminators. Red tendrils of power snaked around the crater, forming into more creatures. The demons appeared unable to venture too far from the portal, but only for the moment. It was a matter of time before more powerful entities manifested, and the Neverborn would walk abroad on Terra. The Emperor's lackeys were in full retreat, except here, on the main skybridge, where Dorn had launched his counterattack. I think you are a good enough commander to know when you are outmatched. Perturabo chuckled at the thought. Were you expecting some assistance perhaps? Some hidden reserves? You have turned lies into a weapon and guile into your shield, Dorn said. Cultists, traitors, warp abominations. These are your allies now. To win with such powers is no victory at all. The denial snagged at Perturabo's pride, and he straightened, the iron circle clattering into attack formation around him. No victory? Am I not allowed my alliances, brother? Send away the Khan and the Angel. Will the Custodians and the Silent Sisters stand aside to let us settle this equitably? If I bring a weapon, it is only to break a defense you have erected. If you are truly superior, it is time you stepped out of the protective shadow of our father. Is that what you wish? Dorn brandished his chainsword. You and I, blade against hammer. The temptation was almost overwhelming. For long years Perturabo had thought of this moment. He had pictured in exquisite detail how he would humble his brother and prove himself the greatest commander in the galaxy. Now, I don't know about you, but I think Perturabo has a point there. Yes, he's allied with foul creatures and ruinous powers, but so what? Rogal has his allies too. Just because Rogal doesn't approve of their kind, doesn't mean Perturabo can't use them, that it takes away from his achievement. Of course, chaos is corrupt, and as evil as they come. Perturabo is to be condemned for siding with them, but in the context of their conversation, I have to admit, I can see the Hammer of Olympia's point. If Rogal doesn't like it, then the only solution is to do as Perturabo says. Go one-on-one, with only their sons as their forces. Legion versus Legion, and Primarch versus Primarch. Which you could argue that they will do during the scouring, where it appears for now, Perturabo will come away the victor. However, I digress. What a perfect example of the rivalry and hatred between them. Perturabo uttering the "Do you wish to discuss terms?" when Rogal doesn't respond to him, knowing that that would get him, and seeing that reaction within Rogal immediately. It's such a brilliant piece of writing, highlighting the full scope of their personalities. Just what's on the line, within their egos. All in that single question, and a single flinch of a response. Just so good. And you might think that Rogal offering the combat here is an ego-driven desire for revenge, a way to vent his anger and beat Perturabo in person. And sure, there's probably an element of that. Undoubtedly, in fact. However, don't underestimate Rogal. He knows Perturabo is the traitor's best hope of penetrating his defense, winning the siege. If he could take Perturabo out, it all but guarantees holding out until Rabute can arrive. Sure, it's a risk, Perturabo being a formidable warrior in his own right, but it's a risk undoubtedly worth taking. Let's not forget Rogal's already decimated one Primarch at this point, in Alfarius. However, Perturabo would not rise to Rogal's bait. The Vox buzzed, distracting him from the daydream. Lord of Iron, the defenders are withdrawing in good order while we delay the pursuit. With some surprise, he recognised the voice of Forex, whom he had fought dead in the midst of the spaceport. Dawn is playing for time. You would like that, wouldn't you, brother? Perturabo declared, not deigning to respond to his triarch. To take the petty road rather than settle this as generals. A brawl in the dirt may suit you, but it is not enough for me. You may brawl, but I am an expert swordsman. The barb tugged again, but Perturabo would not be drawn by his brother's insults. He pictured again the vision that had sustained him. I will crush you, Dawn. Forgebreaker shall shatter your armour and break your bones before we are done. But that proves nothing save my physical superiority. Before I end you, I will lay low everything you have raised. I will topple your towers and shatter your walls. I will deliver the War Master to our father, and you will watch everything you have trusted be torn apart. When you have nothing left but the rubble of your ambition, and I stand triumphant amid the folly of your inferiority, when all the world's weeping will not save you, and all you have is regret for bricks, and despair for mortar, when you look at me and know that you were bested by the Lord of Iron, and accept the truth of your hubris, only then will my victory be complete, and I will end your suffering. Bold words from a man that sent his minions to do his fighting for him. Dorn stretched out a hand, gesturing to the spaceport and its surrounds. 1 million souls it has cost you for a few kilometers of ground. You always were wasteful, Perturabo, lacking finesse. When Terra burns and the Emperor's corpse is ash, we will see the value of finesse. Lord, Imperial army forces are pulling out too. If we do not secure the sky bridges soon, we'll be facing them all again at the Lion's Gate. Perturabo cut the link to Forex with a snarl. This is just the first wall, Dorn called out. The golden armoured giant turned away and strode back along the bridge to his waiting gunship. The Vox crackled with various commanders informing the Lord of Iron that they had targeting solutions on the Thunderhawk. He ignored them all and watched the gunship lift away on azure plumes. It did not matter how many escaped to the next battle. It would never be enough. It speaks to the depths of Perturabo's hatred here, that he refuses the chance of fighting Rogal, even letting him go, so that he can have the satisfaction of pulling down Rogal's defences while he watches. Because that's not a logical move. There's absolutely no benefit to letting Rogal live. Quite the opposite, in fact. Yet he does. And just think about that. Whereas Rogal came here to, in my opinion, try and remove Perturabo from the board, because he knows Perturabo is the only one who can bring the palace down. Perturabo actively turns down the opportunity of winning the siege outright here. Because make no mistake, without Rogal, the siege is over. Sanguinius nor the Khan, as good as they are, could do what Rogal does, throughout as a commander. As I've said before, the whole Siege of Terra is truly Rogal Dorn's defining moment. His time to shine. And yet Perturabo let it all go, out of sheer spite and jealousy, hatred. How differently things could have been. Kind of encapsulating the whole heresy in a nutshell in a way. As much as it makes sense, it's kind of sad we didn't get to see them go toe to toe here. The two brothers just letting it all go in one of the most anticipated Primarch fights ever. Honestly, I've got no idea who would come out the winner. Rogal's proven himself an absolute badass in combat, but Perturabo equally has done the same. His beatdown of Angron was one for the ages. So it would be a fight for the ages, both of them refusing to yield, to give in to their wounds. You just know it would have to be to the death, because that's the only way one of them is giving in. However, speaking of winning, for all of Perturabo's victory here, you have to say Rogal walks away the victor in some manner, with Perturabo giving up that chance to win the siege outright, simply because of his ego. However, then again, when has a Primarch ever not been governed by that? But as always everyone, what do you think? Who do you think is in the right here with Rogal's criticism? Is Perturabo's counter of Dorn having the Emperor, his brothers, the Sisters of Silence valid, like I think? Or do you disagree? Is this really the defining contest of the Siege of Terra? The two minds who are truly orchestrating the entire thing? And do you, like me, think that Rogal went here to face Perturabo, to try and goad him into battle, to try and use the opportunity to take Perturabo out? And was that in truth because Rogal knew that Perturabo was the only one who could crack his defense? And who do you think would win the duel between the two? A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.